The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty to those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of our Lord's favor. This is our Jubilee. Okay, this is the good news of free land. Let's get that up there as a banner, right? JudetteRevolt.com. Gonna have to learn about the hero's journey to change teams from the adversary to Yah's team. And sadly, those who took the satanic oath to the U.S. Constitution were duped into serving the Pentagon. Ouch, that hurts. So how do we get out of this? Yah is the world's greatest sheep herder. And his ability to herd the sheep is why we're in dispersion to begin with. Yah commanded that if we rebelled and broke covenant with him, that we would be sent into dispersion, and the house of Judah would be scattered, and the house of Israel, they're two separate things, spread out all over the earth. And now Yah is calling back and trying to reestablish the garden. He does this through us, through his anointed servants, and that's where the free land comes in. So this is something that the Yellow Vests revolt should be talking about, because all human beings are motivated with pleasure and pain, and certainly there's enough pain being perpetrated by Babylon. And what do we have to offer with any movement? You know, what did the Tea Party movement have to offer? What did the Occupy Wall Street movement have to offer, right? Law Johnston says that the QAnon group has this, they got a great plan. They got 60,000 indictments, right? So Law Johnston makes a comment here. It's the Jews. Okay, well, the Bible has the ultimate JQ, the ultimate Jew question solution. The Bible is the history of the counterfeiting and a civil war between the Jews. During the time of Moses, there was a conflict that the Israelites did not want Moses initially to be their judge, because they don't want to obey. They become Egyptians. The Israelites become Egyptians. They lose their identity, and they forget where they live, where their nation is, what's their identity. They become Egyptian. They get land in Egypt. They wear the clothes of the Egyptians. They take on the constitution of the Egyptians. And, initially the Egyptians embraced Joseph, but later they started culling the Israelites. All right, so the point is Law here. By the way, Law's an awesome guy. He's actually in our Officer of Peace music video. He's like the big dude, and he has 9/11's an inside job on his shirt. So I first met Law in the Fed Denver and Occupy Denver, right? So he's a We Are Change Colorado guy. He's a veteran activist that took the Occupy Wall Street guys that were kind of ignorant about the Federal Reserve, and all the We Are Change guys took them to the Federal Reserve building in Denver. So what we're coming to, and this would be a great debate, hey, Law, if you're on, I'm going to send you an invite. And what we want to do is have a pitch, right? So law is selling you something because he believes in QAnon and that Donald Trump and the Constitution and all that stuff is good. I say, and Yah says, man cannot create law. And what's the benefit, right? So let's say they arrest all these guys, what's in it for you? So alleged, the Federal Reserve will collapse. The point is, prior to the Federal Reserve, the United States still had slavery. It still had false flags. It still was ruled by the moneylenders, by borrower is servant to the moneylenders, and the United States had a national debt. So Yah has a utopian future for us where you get a free land inheritance. He calls it the kingdom of heaven on earth. It's on earth. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our debts. Well, with what law is proposing, you still have all your debt. As far, However, Yah commands debt forgiveness, land repatriation. It's actually on the Liberty Bell. It's Leviticus 25:10-11. Proclaim liberty throughout the land and all the inhabitants thereof, because Jesus is a righteous Jew who proclaimed Jubilee, which is the song that I sang earlier. And Jubilee means Yah says it. Yah promises, because Yah this whole time has kept all of his promises. And I want to show you a little bit of that. And we got to do, in order to do that, we got to explain how you're going to get free land. Where is the free land? Where is the free land? And where is, how do we know this? Okay, so I need to change over a screen here. No, that's not what I want. I want this. Okay, so I'm going to be reading from the Old Testament. And by the way, it refers to the restitution of all things in Acts. So I'm going to go there first. Yah proclaims, Yah is unique to all gods, because a lot of people say, there's all these gods and, yours is no different than the other. Like, no. This is a unique creator, a unique God. Why is he unique? Because he proclaims the end from the beginning, and he proclaims the good news of the anointed. The Spirit of the Lord's upon me. He has anointed me with the cannabis of Exodus. A lot of people don't hate Yah. They despise Yah and use cannabis. Well, that's why they don't have the full prophecy and the full anointing. And they won't get the free land either if they're rebels in the kingdom. Okay, so Acts 21. Right. Let me read this. So by the way, in Acts 3:21, it was at the 9th hour of incense, and Peter is addressing the Jews. He makes 3,000 disciples, and he convicts them. That the times of refreshing may come from the presence of Lord, the Holy Spirit, and that he may send Jesus the Christ, who has been appointed for you. Heaven must take him in until the time comes for the restoration of all things, which God announced long ago through his holy prophets. And most people are familiar with that verse, but it's actually the restitution. So there's a time of refreshing, and think of a computer that gets refreshed. Jubilee is a restart. It's a refreshing. It's a start over from scratch. It's the Israelites go from being in captivity. They start new. They become monotheists. They reject polytheism, where they have a little bit of Egyptology and a little bit of Baal worship and a little bit of worship of Yah, right? Yah wants a bride that obeys only him, to the restriction of all other morality. So in the King James, who heaven must receive until the times of restitution of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of his holy prophets since the world began. These are the promise of the restoration of the garden. Tribal, First Nation, where you're in a society that's cohesive and without forced diversity. Remember, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, there was forced diversity being perpetrated against the American Indians. And remember, prior to that, there was forced diversity being perpetrated against the Hawaiian people, right? Were they given, hey, imagine the first white guys come into Hawaii said to the Hawaiian people, we're going to make this a military base, and we're going to have nuclear aircraft carriers parked off here, which have, we're going to test nuclear weapons on your islands and just blast them so that they're uninhabitable. And there's nothing you can do about it, right? Because that's biblical. It says the kingdom of heaven has been under violence, and the violent take it by force. The kingdom of heaven is physical. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. The meek shall inherit the earth. This is about a biblical conflict about the land and who controls the land. Well, Yah created it all, unless you're a big banger and you believe somehow nothing can explode. That's completely unscientific. So I want to focus on restitution and explain how the Yellow Vest movement should focus on free land inheritance and debt cancellation. Well, if Yah created it all, which he did, and since he created the story that we are living out, then if we get our intentions with our movements, we take every thought captive in obedience to Yah and Jesus, the Christ, the Anointed One, before everything we do, everything we think, and everything we say, and everything that we put our hands to. That's what it means about the mark. Through money monopoly, the bad guys are able to control our mind and our motivations through money. It's a carrot control. And then they hire the mercenary government, the police and the military. They're the stick. But they hire the police and the military, and we can do this with biblical economics. The whole thing gets turned on its head when we defy acts of Caesar. Okay, so that's the restitution of all things. So what does this word restitution mean, right? What is this word? This is extremely important. What does this word restitution mean? So I want to read the definition. Okay, bear with me. That's the wrong spot. I need another. I have various, it's the wrong side. So restitution basically deals with theft. When something's stolen, there's restitution. Okay, so that is not it. Man, I apologize. I had this lined up and I got it all scrambled. I guess that's easy enough to look up. I just don't want to go too slow with this. I have a file that I got to open back up. Restitution of all things. Okay, we got there. Okay, I apologize. Okay, here we go. Restitution, a noun. The restitution of something lost or stolen to its proper owner. The restoration. Seeking the restitution of land taken from blacks under apartheid. Synonyms. Return. Think of that. Return means repent. Restoration, handing back, surrender. Restitution, restoration of land seized. Recompense for injury or lost. He was ordered to pay $6,000 in restitution. African Americans often use the word reparations. These words are synonymous. compensation, recompense, reparations, damages, indemnification, indemnity, reimbursement, repayment, redress, remuneration, restitution for damage caused. By the way, as shalomers, right? Shalom means more than just peace. It means, like peace be with you, shalom. It means more than just peace. It actually means to make injured parties whole. So when Jesus is proclaimed as the Prince of Peace, which he is, that means he's the Prince of Shalom. He's the Prince of making injured people groups, injured African Americans, injured Hawaiians, injured Africans, injured Europeans, injured Asians, making them whole. He's the Prince of that. Because he's the king of the Israelites who whipped the moneylenders, right? So many protesters, they've got this cognitive dissonance where they'll say they're a Christian or they'll say that they're fighting the bankers, but as soon as you say Jesus fought the bankers and we should do it the way Jesus did it, they run away. They don't want to surrender to the Sabbaths of 7, right? Every 7 years, you cancel all the debt. Yah proclaims. Okay, so focusing on the land. So we just learned about restitution. Okay, so let's get, I wanted to get into a couple verses which deal with restitution. So we defined the word restitution, but is that in the Bible, right? So the dictionary says restitution is the return of that which has been stolen. Okay, so I want to screen share once again. Okay. Bear with me. Okay, I'm on the book of Acts. I want to go back. So what you can do, any of you, if you're just learning this, is just go to BibleHub.com or any, this is where you can just type in a word, right? So if I type in the word restitution, I can see all of the instances in the Bible. I mistyped it. So you can find all of the places. So effectively what you're doing here, a long, long time ago, there were no dictionaries. The Bible was the only book. And the Bible's 1/3 poetry. It's, basically 1/3 law and 1/3 history. And the history is prophecy. They're allegories or parables about how things end. And this history is a repeated cycle. And when you study it, my degree is in history, and it was a worthless degree because it didn't talk about the cycles in the Bible of release and captivity, right? Cycles of release and captivity that are equivalent to seasons. That's Yah created the seasons. There's 4 seasons. He created the 7 colors that are in the rainbow, Roy, G, Biv. He created the 7 notes in music, A through G. So the architect of the heavens and earth has a 7-branched plant called the cannabis leaf, and there's 7 Sabbaths. And at the 7th Sabbath, which is the Feast of Tents, where you go camping for a whole week with your kids and you cancel debt, man, This is a great and holy God that has very good news for humanity. Very, very, very good news of restitution of those who have no hope and that they're killing themselves, the military veterans that served the Pentagon, who took a satanic oath to the U.S. Constitution like myself, right? Who knew? We were duped. So it's the job of the prophets, like all of you, like the prophet Bob Marley, who said Exodus, movement of Yah's people. Okay, so restitution in the Bible, where does it appear? Exodus 22:3. Anyone who steals must certainly make restitution. But if they have nothing, they must be sold for their theft. Whoa, think about that. If they don't have any, if they stole something, they themselves, the people that committed, the thieves, must be sold, because there's no prison in the Bible. So Yah actually sells his people into slavery individually and collectively. But that's part of what is to happen. Okay, so Exodus 22:12. If an animal was stolen from the neighbor, restitution must be made to the owner. There's lots of instances. Leviticus 5:16, they must make restitution for what they have failed to do in regard to the holy things. Pay an additional penalty of 1/5 of its value. Numbers 5:7, they must make full restitution for the wrong they have done. Add 1/5 of the value to it. So not only do you got to give them back, but you give them a convenience. So you've been inconvenienced through their theft. Leviticus 6:5. They must make restitution in full and add 1/5 of the value to it and give it to the owner on the day they present a guilt offering. Leviticus 24:21. Whoever kills an animal must make restitution, but whoever kills a human being must be put to death. Leviticus 24:18, anyone takes the life of someone's animal must make restitution. Leviticus 22:14, anyone who eats a sacred offering by mistake must make restitution. If a fire breaks out and spreads into the bushes, the thumb brushes, so that it burns and shocks grain and standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. So this is the king of justice that's promising that if you obey my commandments, you'll never be enslaved by these money lenders in the first place. That's in the curses and blessings of Deuteronomy. Exodus 22:11, the owner is to accept this and no restitution is required. The owner shall accept the oath and he is not to make restitution. So Yah proclaims the instances where restitution is commanded and the instances where restitution is not. Exodus 22:13, if he is torn by beast, let him bring it as evidence. He shall make no restitution for what has been torn. And again, like I said, people, well, that's the Old Testament. Well, it's in the New Testament. Heaven must receive him until the time for God. I read that early. He must remain in heaven until the time of universal restitution, for which God announced long ago through the voice of his holy prophets. So today, in fact, Jesus, a prophet of Yah, when he was coming to proclaim Jubilee, when he read from the scroll of Isaiah 61, a prophet of Yah proclaiming the good news, Jesus read from the scroll of Isaiah in the temple of the Jews, in the synagogues themselves. And he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach the good news. What he was saying, all of you that are oppressed, debt cancellation, free land, and by the way, the Jews should know that because that was in Nehemiah 5 as part of a debt revolt. So anyway, this is a commandment of law. And then that when the righteous return, that they will command it. And what's going to happen? Those who defend the establishment, they will attack. They will attack. They will attack. They will attack in every way possible. They will attack in every way possible. The messengers, the prophets of Yahweh sharing this good news, because when Jesus proclaimed Jubilee, they wanted to throw him off a cliff. Okay, so I want to show. All right, so Hawaii. Okay, Hawaii. What, why does this matter? You know what I mean? Like, why is the Bible relevant? Why is it relevant? Because this is the operating owner's manual to earth. This is the instruction manual. Think of this as a seed. And a seed, or semen, the seed of men, right, has instructions within it. And it had a seed. When you plant a garden or you plant the mustard seed, eventually you can dwell in it because it has the instructions in order to create a benevolent society. The Bible in the image, the meme, shows that it's an economics manual. Well, the economics manual deals with monetary issuance, taxes. It deals with restitution. It deals with how you cancel debt every 7 years. It deals with who elects the leaders. Is there voting? Do you need a majority? No and no. The Bible says, Yah says. It also deals with the land management. It deals with the garden. Basically, Yah wants to dwell among his people as he did in the garden. And in order to accomplish that, he needs a cohesive society of one mind that obeys his laws. And they basically collectively are the bride which is obedient to him and him alone, to the exclusion of all other sources of morality. The benefit of that, Hawaiian people, is that like Moana, each of you can go on a hero's journey for a land, just like Moana, where she looks around and everything is broken. It's because Yah's heart is broken, and he's bringing in the curses, just like Tefiti, or whatever her name was giving curses to the land, the death that was coming. And the grandmother prophetess came to say, you got to do these things, and then you can restore the blessing to your society. And it's done non-violently, but you got to go on a hero's journey to accomplish that. So that's how you kick out the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, right? That's how you kick out the United States Navy, because Yah is fully intending to defeat all of the armies of Pharaoh, just like he did 3,400 years ago. This is the creator of the heavens and earth. And most people have no idea of the miracles which are about to occur. But it's essential that we communicate this good news, and we have to go out into our communities and proclaim it. Else, the people will be deceived with false solutions and false idols, and will remain slaves to man's law. Okay, so that's what the Shalomers are to do, is to make whole. There's free land. And so in the meme, obviously the Hawaiian people have had their land stolen. So this is very good news to them. And I want to give you a little more prophecy about something. It's called, you're gonna take over. You're gonna inhabit lands that you did not build. Okay. So let me move back to full screen. Can I do that? Yes, I can do that. All right, so we're done with that. So we've proven that restitution is in the Bible. I want to talk about some cities that you did not build. Okay. All right, so it's in the Old Testament once again. Here's a psalm about it. He gave them the lands of nations that they might inherit the fruit of others' labor. Right? So you're going to get the fruit of it. So other people have built something, and those that obey the king are going to get it. Because the devil, by the way, the devil makes a counterfeit of everything that Yah does. So the adversary, when it reads that, it says the adversary is playing God. So it does the very same thing to the unrighteous, and it rewards them for with like Zuckerberg. Right? He doesn't deserve all that land that he has in Hawaii, maybe some other place, but certainly not Hawaii. That's not his land. He's European. Okay, Deuteronomy 6:11, cities that we did not build. And when the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to you and your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he would give to you. By the way, Yah speaks in parables, so he's not just talking about all of the people of the earth going into tiny little Israel. So when he's talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, this isn't just about the people that all live in Jerusalem. Okay. He would give you a land with great and split. Think of the land, if you're Hawaiian, think of the land of your fathers as being Hawaii. If you're European, the land of your fathers is in Europe. If you're African, the land of your fathers is in Africa. If you're Asian, the land of your fathers is in Asia. Okay. He will give you a land with great and splendid cities that you did not build, with houses full of every good thing, which you did not fill them, and with wells that you did not dig, and with vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. And when you eat and are satisfied, be careful not to forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. And a lot of people will say, I'm not a slave in Egypt. Well, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yah commanded that too. Yah commanded in Deuteronomy 28:68 that you would be sold by ships back into Egyptian captivity through citizenships. There's some prophecy that he fulfilled. That's part of the strong delusion. Yah has always been in control, and we reject the very idea that we're under a curse, but we are under the curse of the moneylenders from Deuteronomy. If you read Deuteronomy 28, you'll recognize that all of us, everyone today who's a debt slave, is an Israelite. If you're a debt slave, which all of us are, except for the very tiny few moneylenders, so that means the president, that means the Congress, even that means all the police and the military, they're all debt slaves because they're not the moneylenders. But even the U.S. government borrows the money from the moneylenders. Okay, so that's Deuteronomy 6:11, Deuteronomy 19:1. I'm going to get to instances where Yah fulfilled these promises. Deuteronomy 19:1. When the Lord your God has cut you off the nations whose land he is giving you, so that you drive them out and settle in their cities and houses. So there's, at this time, this was prior. So it's after it's part of the Exodus story in Deuteronomy. So they've left captivity, and they're monotheists, and they only obey Yah. Only obey Yah. Not that they didn't rebel and become idolatrous, but they were fully, and they're no longer paying Pharaoh's debts. They're out in the middle of the wilderness. They weren't using Pharaoh's money. They weren't tithing to Pharaoh. But what happens, the way you can still rebel is where man creates law, like Adam and Eve, right? Like by listening to, by becoming hateful, by becoming subject to the carnal sins of lust and greed and sloth, and that's all idolatry. That's all part of being a rebellious bride. Okay, Joshua 24:13. So now they've moved into the promised land, and they're going to occupy cities and towns that they didn't build. Joshua 24:13. I gave you a land you did not labor for, in cities that you did not build, though you live in them, and you are eating from vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. So Yah proclaimed the future. He proclaimed the end from the beginning. So the beginning, he proclaims how it's going to go for the generation of Caleb and Joshua. Moses didn't have this because they were so much Egyptians that they had to wait a generation until they could get all that Egyptian out and become courageous enough to fight the giants in the land, because they were only Caleb and Joshua were unafraid of the giants. So it was only the next generation that was able to go into the land, and because they weren't so cowardly, because they didn't have carnal eyes. They had eyes like David. That they had spiritual eyes, and they so surely the Yah in me can defeat any adversary. All right, so that's one instance where Yah kept his word and gave the Israelite people. This is important because this is how it's going to go, and here's the historical instances where I'm going to give you the same thing. Okay, the people eventually rebelled, and Yah sold them into slavery once again, and they were dispersed. So the Jews were sold into Babylonian captivity, right? And there's a song about it by Sublime. It goes, from the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and where we wept, when we remembered Zion. Oh, for the wicked carried us away, captivity required from us a song. But how can we think of a song in this strange land? Right? So they're in captivity and they're lamenting, they're in pain, just like the Hawaiian people are in pain of their captivity. Think of like an African American in Georgia, right? He's in a strange land where there's this downpression. Like think of Bob Marley, or think of the Melodians who wrote that song, right? The Melodians, they, through the word of Yah, they were inspired to create that song so that when I sing it, right? When Sublime sings it, when the Melodians sing it, and that verse is from the Bible. And so by singing these songs, it literally tears down the foundation. It's the word of Yahweh weaponized, cutting through bone marrow, cutting down the Ashtaroth, cutting down the Constitution, cutting down lies, cutting down deceptions, cutting down the very foundation, the sand upon which Babylon lives. Because that idolatry in our temples must be destroyed. And Yah wants to say, Yah's revolution has historic precedent. Nehemiah 5 is the historic precedent of land being returned. So they're in captivity in Babylon, right? Then they return back into Jerusalem because they swore they would be righteous, and they had what they actually had through Ezra. Ezra did 4 things. He made his heart soft. He prepared his heart to receive Yah's word, to obey Yah's word, to learn Yah's word, to teach Yah's word, and to do Yah's word. Thank you, Pastor Ted Weiland, for teaching me that, right? So Yah inspires his prophet to use Yah's word as a weapon to strike down all of these lies. Okay, so, all right, so then the history repeats. They come back into the land and they get the land that they didn't, some stuff that they didn't build. Some of it their ancestors did, some that they didn't, because they were in captivity for 70 years. Okay, Nehemiah 9:25. They captured fortified cities and fertile land and took houses full of all goods, wells already dug, vineyards, olive groves, and fruit trees in abundance. So they ate and were filled, and they grew fat and delighted in your great goodness. Nehemiah 5 is a debtor's revolt where the land was returned because it was stolen by usurers. I'm going to say this now and hear it. All of the land on earth, all of it on earth has been stolen by usurers. Since the days of John the Baptist, the kingdom is under violence and the violent take it by force. All of it is Yah's. And he has the supreme law of the land, not the Constitution. That's why it's so important to get rid of the Constitution. Okay, so those are some historic instances. And it's a psalm, it's a song, right? He gave them the lands of the nations that they might inherit the fruit of others' labor. Psalm 105:44, right? All of this based on Nehemiah 9:25. Okay, so now that we know that the biblical story is a parable, this is the owner's manual for the earth, right? So what has happened? If you think, if we go back, right? If we use our time machine and we look at the world from 2,500 years ago, or going back even further, 4,000 years ago, at the time of the Tower of Babel, right? What Babylon does is it always tries to centralize everything and then mix it. Babylon means mixing and confusion. So it takes all of the earth, for instance, and where there used to be bison, which was native to North America, it slaughters them all and then replaces them with cattle and horses, which weren't here previous, right? Babylon just mixes it up. And what Babylon wants to do is create a monoculture with, think of Hollywood and Madison Avenue and Disney, and it exports the satanic humanistic system across the earth. Gives everybody constitutional republics and communism, fascism, and it's just different versions of rule by moneylender. That's all that's going on. Okay, so I've got one more meme, and that's really it. Where's the land? Bear with me. I got to share my screen once again. Share. Okay, now I got to bring up. I hit the wrong button like a dummy. I apologize. Okay. Now I got to bring that up. Okay, that's the last meme. Okay, Acts 3:21, restitution of all things. I'm going to read some more of the different verses. Number one, a lot of people think the whole earth is going to explode in a, Holocaust or like just planet meltdown with all the nuclear war and all that. And Yah says through the rainbow commitment from Noah's time that Yah loves the earth. He pledges that and promises that he will not have another flood. He wants to change people's hearts. He's not going to change the law. He's going to keep the law and he's going to change our hearts. And he actually does that with the cannabis anointing through the altar incense, which was actually utilized at the 9th hour, which was at the time. You can read it in Acts 3:21. Acts 2 was at the 3rd hour of the hour of incense. So I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of a covenant between me and the earth. All right, Leviticus 25:10, which is the year of our Lord's favor, which Jesus was reading from the scroll of Isaiah 61, which deals with this. This is on the Liberty Bell. Ye shall return every man unto his possession, every man unto his family. My family came from Europe. We were part of the Babylonian mixing of empire. And what happens is they conquer you, they conquer the Jews, right? And then the Jews become corrupted with the virus of usury, and then they export it. And then the Europeans adopt it, and they have the virus of usury and mammon and capitalism, whatever you want to call it. And then they export it to the New World. And then they export it to South America. Then they export this virus to the Pacific Islands and then to China. And through forced diversity upon the Chinese, that's what Great Britain was doing to the Chinese, was forced diversity. They started the Opium Wars. The Opium Wars continue to this day. That's what they're using to destroy the societies all over the planet. That's why there's an opioid epidemic. It's the same thing over and over. The adversary has come to do nothing but to kill and destroy and steal. Jesus whipped the money lenders and called them a den of thieves, right? They've stolen the land. Restitution of all things, that means everything is restored. It's a time of refreshing where everything is restored. Okay. Deuteronomy 35. Yah will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed. Right? So the Muslims leave Europe and go back to the Middle East, the house of Ishmael. The Africans go back to Africa in their own exodus. And by the way, what's interesting, when the Europeans, all of us, when we go back into the land, those lands will be possessed by Canaanites. And we will be faced with the very same challenges that Joshua faced. Don't you know the prophecy comes true? Don't you know? Because they're secular humanists. They are Baal worshipers. They are passing their children through the fire to Moloch. They are participating in abortion. They're participating in all the 7 deadly sins. They're participating in the 7 sins of the Canaanites, which is pedophilia, child sacrifice, child kidnapping, pornography, adultery, sodomy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You name it. So regardless of where you go, including to Jerusalem, they're all Canaanites. They all are using the Egyptian pyramid money. They're all using the 666. They're all under the mark of the beast, and to varying degrees and slightly different ways. They're all undergoing human farming operations. And by the way, the very first obstacle that Joshua faced was Jericho. And Jericho had a 7 times 7. 7 times 7. What is 7 times 7? 49. When is the Jubilee year? 50, right? There's a day off in there. There's a sabbatical year. You know how professors have sabbaticals. So that's the word for today. I hope we all learned something with the Lord's Prayer. And my outreach is to, this is the problem that we're challenged with, is I know revolutionaries, a lot of them, that I've marched with in Occupy Wall Street and Tea Party movement, the Glenn Beck 912 groups, and the Fed marches, Oath Keeper marches, and they don't have a solution. So everybody goes like, how do you what's the best revolution? How do you know how to pick a revolution? Well, the way you know how to pick a revolution is begin with the end in mind. Which group has kept their promises? Have the founders kept their promises? Well, Yah has kept his promise the whole time, because Yah promised that if you rebel, I'm going to put you into Egyptian captivity, which he has. Because even Jerusalem, even the Israelites of today, they have an Egyptian obelisk and an Egyptian pyramid in their Supreme Court building. They've been deceived just like everybody else. And in the broader context, in the Vatican, they have an Egyptian obelisk. In the city of London, they have an Egyptian obelisk. And in Washington, D.C., there's an Egyptian obelisk. It's the same one world Babylonian system, the Tower of Baal, where today human beings through transhumanism and technology and the monopoly over money, they're playing God, and they're spreading human beings all over the earth through forced diversity. And through monopoly money, they can get people to move for jobs, to move from one side of the country to the other, for women to marry men they don't really love and stay with men they don't really love, et cetera, right? And, men who are of great character can't get women because they don't have any money, because they're trying to remain separate from this wicked system. So that's where we are right now. And this is the greatest challenge. This is the JQ, right? So there's Jews we are all involved within a civil war. Are we going to be like the righteous Jews, like Nehemiah, who whipped the moneylenders like Jesus and led a successful debt forgiveness revolution? Or will we be like the defiant Jews, like Herod, like even Paul, when Paul was scourging and persecuting the believers initially until he changed teams. So all of us have to change teams and realize that humanism, we the peopleism, is the same as Adam and Eve and the serpent in the garden, voting and making law and having their eyes open, becoming like gods, and through their vanity, thinking that they are like God. So I'm going to read comments here. Oh, no. I hope that's not the case. It's saying here, I lost audio. Never mind. Law says that I lost audio, and then finally says, never mind, I got it. So I hope maybe it was on your end because I have to go watch the kids and help out with the mommy. Okay, so that's the good word for today. So there's a verse in the Bible that says, "For lack of vision, my people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he." Well, this is how you keep the law. You have restitution. Be a shalomer, offer shalom and making everyone whole, so that all the First Nation status can be returned to the people. Free land, everybody, in cities you did not build. And this is the prophecy and how it will all end. This is how it will all end eventually. So the earlier and quicker we do this, the less gnashing of teeth there will be. That's it for today.